Thank you, Lisa.
Right.
Welcome, everyone.
Welcome, everybody.
It's time.
It says it's streaming live on YouTube.
Yes, we are streaming live on YouTube. I'm not sure how many people are actually watching, but
we're streaming live.
We're streaming live.
So if I go on YouTube, and I want to watch it again, what do I type in?
Well, there will be a recording of it on the Cancer Wellness Center YouTube channel. So I think you just search the channel, right?
Right.
Yeah. You
So
search.
how do I just put Cancer Wellness?
Yeah.
YouTube?
Yeah.
Yeah, I would put Cancer Wellness Center.
Yeah, and on the YouTube website.
Our YouTube channel should be listed on every email that comes from any staff member. At the bottom of the email, there are our social media links, and you can click on that YouTube link at the bottom of my email or any other signature line from anybody else in the.
I never noticed that before.
Yes, and it's a good to know about the YouTube channel, because there, anything that we've ever done, you'll see recorded on there. And, part of why I say that is that we cover a lot of great stuff here in this kitchen, and it's a lot of content. So sometimes people miss things, and that's why we record them. So that you can go back or maybe you wanted to see something about an ingredient that we're going to showcase or a recipe, you get to go back and see it even better.
You could get famous,
I thought we were.
Yeah, well, we're famous in our own minds, I think.
Well, you could end up with, do you know how many people have been watching you?
I didn't have anywhere to put my hands, so I put them on my chest.
Okay.
Somebody is not
Let's
muted.
mute everybody.
So everybody, could you please mute yourselves, because we can hear what you say. I don't know who that was, but yeah, we can hear what you say. So anyway, we're going to get started.
Not fooling around.
We're not fooling around today.
We got
and we want to welcome you to Longevity Kitchen, which is part of our Mindful Kitchen series. This Mindful Kitchen series is all about a mindful perspective to nutrition and our diet. And we're going to have some new programs in 2021 now that we're kind of back in the kitchen and we're back on it again. So look forward to those. What do we have going on in the future, Laura? Anything?
Well, let's introduce ourselves first.
Let's introduce ourselves
because
first. Yes,
chances are we know most of you in the audience. Thank you so much for attending. We love to see your faces.
Yep.
But there may be new participants to us, so we'd like to introduce ourselves first. My name is Lori Bombacco. I'm an oncology dietitian, and I work here at the center part-time, so I can meet with individuals if they're interested in learning more specifically about utilizing nutrition so that they can help themselves wherever they are in the cancer continuum of care. And then I work alongside my wonderful colleague here.
partner.
She gets to introduce herself after me though. That's our
There
partnership.
now you know how this works.
But we actually have worked together in a program called Weight Loss for Wellness, and that's where we were introduced to one another in terms of this lovely partnership that I think has only bloomed over time. And so in that Weight Loss for Wellness program, we combine mind and body, and I think because of that exploration of using mindfulness in every aspect of our life, including like the physical aspect of eating nutritious foods, it really can transform anyone we're working with to a better place. We see it, And so from that program, so many great ideas and additional classes like this one have really grown out of.
Yes, and it's all about healthy behavior change, right?
There's that too.
Yeah, there's that. Healthy behavior change, peaceful and compassionate attitudes, really makes for a good life, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
I want that.
Yeah, I want that too. Yeah, well, we work toward that.
Yes,
Right.
we try.
So, hi, everybody. My name is Debbie Cronenberger. I am a licensed clinical counselor and a yoga and meditation teacher. My specialty is mindfulness-based everything. And I've been working at the Cancer Wellness Center for some time. I have a practice also where I see patients individually. Again, Lori and I have embarked on a partnership where we provide programming for the Cancer Wellness Center for cancer patients and their loved ones on how to really live more peacefully, and through that we live a healthy life.
Yeah.
Right. So that includes everything. It includes mind, working with our mind. It includes working with our body, mind, body. Food is such a mind, body.
Opportunity.
Yes.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thank you.
It's like a vehicle.
I didn't have a word for that.
Partner.
Yes, finishing sentences for each other. So that's good. So today is one of those programs. We have been exploring what are now called the blue zones.
Yes.
Right? Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And we have been exploring them too. And these areas of the world, and there's 5 of them that we're exploring, really are an illustration of mind-body practices that they have discovered promote longevity.
Yes. Yeah, and I have a thought, so I just wanted to share it.
Yeah.
I guess ask you, because I'm going back to what I mentioned earlier, that I was like, yeah, I want a happy, healthy, peaceful life. I want it.
Yeah.
And Debbie so eloquently said, well, we work on it. We're working towards that.
Yes.
And I think that is the gist of Longevity Kitchen. And
Yeah.
this series is that it's about behaviors in pursuit of a happy, healthy, peaceful life.
Yeah.
But I imagine that it's the enjoyment and the fulfillment is also in the pursuit. The daily practices are fulfilling. It's not like a means to an end.
Yeah.
Is what I'm
It's
trying to
not.
say.
Is
Yeah.
that what are you saying? It's not about the destination, but it's about the journey. It's about how you get there. Is that what you're saying?
She
Lori?
said it. Yeah, we're partners. That is what I was saying.
Okay, yeah, and it is, right? It so is. So many people like rush to the final result.
That's
right?
like the American way.
Mhm.
Yeah, we're like
Yeah.
now. We want it now.
Yeah,
We
let's
don't
just-
want to work hard for it. We want it. Yeah.
So yeah, and these practices, and they are practices, are a journey, right? We often get this comment from people, and these cultures cook, right?
Oh,
They-
yes.
Yeah, they all cook.
Oh yeah,
And we often get, I hate cooking,
we do.
right? We often get that. And look, if you don't, cooking requires time and focus and all this other
Yeah.
stuff. And we look at cooking as like a self-care practice, right? Yeah.
We
it's
have to
really-
do it, right?
Right.
Yeah.
And turns out if we're cooking, we're really controlling what we're doing, and we can control ingredients that perhaps are not so good for us too, right?
Yes.
But think about that. Cooking doesn't require us to feel one way or another about it,
No.
right? It just requires us to cook, right? And a lot of times the end result is, this is delicious, right?
What do you
And
know?
it's healthy for me. So think about right from the start, right from the get-go
Yeah.
of our program, think about your judgments and how you judge things that perhaps don't require judging. I always make a joke that I judged washing dishes for like 30 years. And really, we have to wash dishes, right? So why would we judge it? So while I was judging washing dishes, like, oh, I don't like washing dishes, whining in my mind about it. I was creating stressful feelings, and those aren't good for us, right?
Yeah.
So think about, as you embark on this program with us, think a little bit about that.
Yeah, I really like that. Like, because I think that's the mindfulness piece that I so have missed for a while. I've been a dietitian since 2004, and I think only recently have I appreciated that. That is such an integral approach to healthy eating, is how we think about it, and whether or not we're using it in a way that's conducive, again, to healthy living and peacefulness, because we're not incorporating judgment into the process. We have to eat, right? So why not look at it as a way to embrace it really as an opportunity? Yeah.
And cooking at home and selecting your own ingredients and really taking the time to do that, we look on that as an act of self-care.
Yeah.
That's one of the few things that we can control in a milieu of the world that we can't control. We can't necessarily control what we're breathing in when we walk along the road. There's so many things we can't necessarily control, but selecting quality ingredients, I got that from you, selecting quality ingredients and really looking at what it is we're eating and having more control over it so that we're making an effort at eating in a healthier way over time. That's something that we can control.
Yeah. And the beauty of it all too is that you get to decide where you want to be in and where to take it. And so I think specific to the longevity kitchen is that we get excited about these ingredients. And hopefully that's something you'll discover as well. Like as we're selecting out the recipes, Debbie and I are looking and seeing kind of what jumps out at us.
Yes.
And it's like, I think that two things have happened. Like we learn about a new ingredient and or we're excited to try it and try something new, which I think is really neat about the Longevity Kitchen series. It's about like building confidence, because it's going to work out. It's going to be great. Whatever you try in the kitchen, it will work. And then you're going to feel more excited to continue that. And all of that is, again, like that's self-care, essentially.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
Yeah.
So we are going to embark on our Longevity Kitchen series. We did say that they are the longest, these 5 are the longest living cultures. They each have a unique environment and behaviors that dovetail with their environment that contribute to their longevity. We're going to talk about what they eat and how they eat it, when they eat it, and also what they do with food, right? Like how, if they're sitting in front, like we're often sitting in front of the TV, not even thinking about what we're eating. Well, these cultures are a lot different than that. So today we're going to introduce Okinawa, right?
Yeah, this is our first stop along the series. And in Okinawa, they live a long, healthy, happy, peaceful life. And there's a few things about their behaviors that seem to matter in order to help make that possible. There's lots to discuss about their diet. And I say that word diet, meaning not a plan, not like a book you checked out from the library or you've signed up for a plan and you're on a diet off a diet. These are things that we eat day to day over a lifetime. And the Okinawans have some special things to their diet that I think has contributed to their longevity. And we're gonna explore a handful of those things.
Yeah. Well, we're going to get to that, but what we wanted to do is give you something to contrast the Okinawan diet with, and these other diets are these other ways of living, right? Ways of living. And so we wanted to introduce you to the standard American diet, right? Which is a little sad, but we're gonna pick up and make it a more happy energy after that. But we just want you to start thinking about it.
Yeah. What do you mean sad? What? Standard American diet.
Yeah, which happens to have an acronym that says sad.
It's sad.
Yeah, and it is kind of sad if you really think about it.
Yeah. So overall, as we begin our discussion today and move forward, we want you to think about what you're doing now and even what you were raised on eating. You know, what are the food choices? And if you were to describe them, like what characteristics come to mind? I know for me, what I can share is that it's I would say that the big difference with the standard American diet and some of these long living cultures is the amount of processing that's involved with the food in the sad standard American diet. So we eat highly processed foods, thanks to food science and thanks to the food industry, you know, that really have taken us for granted, I think, you know, and they've created these products that, as Debbie always describes, sort of zing our taste buds.
Zing our taste buds and our brain, right?
Yes.
Pleasure. Think about
Give
when
it
you
more.
take the first bite of an Oreo, that's before you feel sick from it. It's, I guess we're not getting an endorsement from Nabisco
Sorry.
or whatever that is. I don't know who makes those cookies, but think about it. You take a bite and all of a sudden everything in your mouth goes crazy.
Yeah.
And your brain goes crazy too. Remember, everything is mind, body, everything. And so the pleasure sensors in the brain go crazy. Those cookies are engineered to do that. And to really, they induce this state where we have very little control over what we're doing. It's very hard to just eat one Oreo.
Yeah, but I mean, I'm like picturing an Oreo right now, and I just think it's like not food. There's nothing remotely close to nourishing about that, especially if it's involved in sort of a negative loop emotionally, my body, where it's like, if I have it, I want more.
Right.
You know,
And
you're
how
not-
do you usually feel about that? My body feels sick, mind feel mad at yourself. Right?
Yeah. And so that's sort of the sad diet, I would say, in a nutshell, where it is like this disconnect to food right? Because it's not really food. It's a lot of chemicals or additives or extras like sugars and salts and fat. That's what we've become accustomed to. And that's not very nourishing, mind or body. So think about, as we discuss all these wonderful foods and ingredients today and moving forward, how they can honor that opportunity for us to merge mind and body so that we are truly nourished. And then that's a piece of the lifestyle that is conducive to longevity. And longevity, I just as an aside, we want to make sure that we differentiate that word as well. So longevity means, living a long time, but the objective is to live a long time and still be happy, healthy, productive, right? And that's what we see in many of these long living cultures.
Yeah. So it's not just an increase in lifespan, right? It's an increase in health span. And before I continue talking, I just want to excuse me if I go off screen to adjust something where we're the only ones here. So whatever technology stuff we have going on over on the side, I have to address it and then come back on.
So we do the best we can.
We do the best we can. And really, their lives are very connected to the earth, right? And to their community and to the environment around them, right? And so they don't really they don't go to health clubs.
No,
They don't really go to health clubs.
they don't need them.
They don't take like super protein shakes or supplements. I don't know, maybe they're taking like a vitamin D if it's cloudy or something. I don't know.
Yeah.
Maybe. But they really aren't doing a lot of the stuff that we do. We go to the health club, we take a ton of supplements. And what we're finding is that there's nothing wrong with those, but these people are living longer through not doing that.
Right,
So,
isn't that interesting?
yes.
Yeah. So what is it in their natural, normal day-to-day life that is affording them the behaviors, that are promoting longevity.
Yeah. They're,
Doesn't take a gym.
no, and it doesn't take a
protein
rocket scientist or a food scientist or an exercise physiologist, right? To
Apparently
figure
not.
out what
What are healthy long living
Yeah.
behaviors? Yeah.
they're not, they don't have a lot of equipment in their homes,
Right.
right? I don't think we saw one picture of somebody pumping iron. Did we see that? We
No.
did not. No,
Pretty sure no.
we did not. So what is it that they're doing, Laura? What are they doing?
Yeah. So I love about specifically with the Okinawans, what I recall hearing or reading about is that they're in the garden, right? They have which I mean, that's great for growing healthy foods and herbs, but it's also like this reason to be outside, kind of good, right? Kind of good for us. And then this connection too with the earth, like you said,
Yeah.
with our environment.
And we find that in almost every culture that we've explored, right? They're gardening, right? And boy,
Yeah.
gardening is so good for us, mind and body, right? Because we get a sense of purpose from gardening,
Yeah.
which we know is really good for us. When I'm evaluating somebody, when they're in therapy, I'm always asking them, what do you do what do you do during the day? What are the activities that you engage in during the day? And if they say, well, I mostly lay on the couch and watch TV, and I think, we have
I
some
can see that.
behavior change that's gonna be at the top of the list, right? But if they say, oh, I get out in my garden as much as I can, and they have a sense of purpose, maybe they're helping other people, and working also is very important, right?
Of course.
Having a job to do, but look, if you're aged as old as they are, you're not working anymore.
No.
80s, late 70s, 80s, 90s, into their
Right.
hundreds. And so, what are they doing?
They're not bringing a paycheck home, but they're working. They're physically working by being in the garden and taking care of family, especially the elderly. They're revered in Okinawa, but other cultures as well that we'll talk about. Because they have a purpose, they have responsibilities to contribute to their family and to their society. And so they are, they honor, respect them. They pass lessons on to younger generations. And in a sense, that's what's helped longevity cultures, right? Because there's this incubation almost, right? Where even despite outside influences like the sad diet, they preserve culture.
Yes,
Yeah.
they preserve culture, they preserve community. Very, very important. A lot of these cultures live in a little bit more isolated locations, and so relying on each other is really an important part of their way of life. Their ways of life are community-based, right? They all know each other, and most importantly, I don't know if they all know each other really, but I don't think they said that. But there's a sense of belonging, right? And so often in our culture, really the worst disease for us is loneliness and a sense of not belonging anywhere. That's why family is important, but beyond family is important. A sense of, belonging somewhere. That's why, again, whenever I'm interviewing somebody for the first time, I ask them, do you belong to a church? Are you active in an organization? What is your neighborhood like? Because we know that a sense of belonging is really important for them.
Mm-hmm.
And these cultures, they all have something that binds them together.
Yeah.
Usually it's living in the same town, right?
Just simply that. Yeah.
And activities that they do communally.
And so it forces, because of that environment, it forces this regular daily interaction, and they notice, they check in on one another. They notice when someone's not there. And gosh, what a great sense of community that must offer. And that stood out to me too. I think with all the longevity cultures, I feel sort of isolated, even though I have neighbors. I think that has changed, in our society. We're sort of locking doors, shutting window shades, keeping everyone out. I don't know that that's a necessarily good thing for us.
Well, it turns out it's not. Not. So we have to, so we have to make an effort at it, right? We have, because we live in a culture that's based on getting around with cars, especially during COVID, right? Where everybody kind of fled the walking places because they're more densely populated. So we have to make an effort to get back to reaching out to our neighbors, walking whenever we possibly can. I know I love to be able to walk downtown and get a coffee and see people that I know. So that's important to think about if you can create something like that. Now, Cancer Wellness Center, of course, we have a great community. We look forward to having everyone back. Yeah, we really do. Really is a close-knit community when you're here, even if it's for a temporary time. What a great way to have a community is in supporting each other through something that's challenging in your life.
Yes.
And in these cultures, they have that kind of built in already, right? They share with childcare, they share when somebody is ill, they kind of get together. They, with the very elderly, there's things in place where people go over and check on them and make sure that they have what they need. They don't let them eat by themselves.
Yeah, I just love that. I think that in my experience, just to share, and again, this is sort of a comparison. So here, when I work with the elderly and I find that maybe they live alone, maybe they're widowed, and that comes up because maybe they're struggling to eat enough. And that makes a lot of sense to me. It's not always fun to eat alone. And what we see is that when we eat in the presence of other people, we are enjoying that experience that much more. And I think it often, for the people I work with, when they're surrounded by others, if it's a holiday or a celebration and that elderly grandparent is around their family members, they eat better. And what an interesting thing.
Yeah. It all goes back to having a sense of place and having a sense of belonging. So important. Yeah. So the other thing that we find with these cultures is that they're not wealthy cultures.
No, I was thinking about that earlier too. Yeah. They're not.
Right? Like they look at us and they're like, wow.
They're fancy.
Yeah. Well, we're not fancy.
No, they are.
They're like Lori and Debbie, they're not fancy, but everybody else is. So they eat, what's local and what they're gardening, what they're farming, what they're gardening, what is local, what their environment offers to them, the abundance of their location. So like the Okinawans, right? They live on an island in the middle of the Pacific, right? They're very isolated. And boy, that island just gets pummeled with weather. So so interesting. This is so interesting that, of course, they eat fish and seafood a lot because that's what's there.
Right.
But they flavor a lot with that, right? They use that as a condiment a lot. Right. But they also grow, and is one of their staples. It is not rice, right? Which we find in a lot of the Asian cultures, right? In the Far East, rice. Even the Near East, it's rice.
Yeah.
Not for the Okinawans. And why? Because the storms that rage over the island frequently have flattened the crops so many times that they were like, forget it.
We give up.
We give up. They were like, white flag on the rice. And they began to plant sweet potatoes because they grow underground and they're protected from the weather, thus protecting them from basically crop failure and starvation. And because the winds and the hurricanes don't flatten the crops, they're pulling the sweet potatoes out of the ground, and they have developed a really healthy variety of sweet potato that's a purple one.
Purple?
Yeah. And
I thought sweet potatoes were only one color.
Well, why don't you tell us about that?
We actually have another example of a vegetable and a root vegetable at that. So interestingly,
Yes.
this weather mattered for the Okinawans, and they were super resourceful, and they just grew what they could, root vegetables. So besides the sweet potato, which I thought was orange, now the Okinawans, they have something special over there. Now the pigment is different, but it's still a sweet potato. It tastes like a sweet potato. In fact, we've made it before in this kitchen. But the color lends a different property to that vegetable. And so we want to take advantage of those pigments. And I'm going to talk about that in one of our recipes today.
Yes.
Yeah, that purple sweet potato.
Yes.
Yes.
And so they eat what's local. They all eat really similarly. So, and we find that, you could Japanese food, Mexican food, Jewish food,
Sardinian Italy.
food, yes. So the Okinawans and all the other cultures, they have not only their own cultural food like Japan, but they have their own variation of it, much like we do in the States, where you go to the South and they have certain specialties, you go to the Northeast. And a lot of that is based on location and what's available. So the Okinawans they have exploited that, and the way of eating is not expensive.
No. And, I was thinking about that earlier when you mentioned, like, here they are on an island with this weather, they exploited what they, they used their resources and they exploited them, right? But it worked in their favor.
Mm-hmm.
And they sort of are like vegetarian by circumstance. And many of our long living cultures that we discuss, you would think is almost vegetarian, but they do incorporate flavors, as Debbie mentioned, like from the sea, especially. And so think about that as being a condiment, like fish to them is a condiment, that they use those flavors in and applying them to those plant foods, lots of vegetables, lots and lots.
Yeah, so do you want to talk a little bit about the characteristics of the Okinawans in particular? So we find that about all the cultures that we're moving forward and exploring. And the next culture we'll explore in 2 weeks. Yes, in 2 weeks,
Yes.
So, but let's talk about what makes the Okinawans so special.
Let's. So one word comes to mind, and I think it only occurred to me this time around, which thank you for participating because you didn't get this before. Umami. Umami. Who's heard of umami before? Anyone?
Me.
Oh.
I have, but I don't know. I really don't understand what it is.
Not a lot of people do.
Yeah.
So umami describes the 5th flavor. Now, I would say it's not quite a flavor, but more of an experience. Umami is like just in a world of its own. And the Okinawan diet is full of umami in terms of the flavor, but more importantly, the experience. So umami was discovered, I think it was like the earliest 20th century by a Japanese scientist. I wrote his name down. I'm not going to pronounce it right.
Just try.
Kakune Akita.
That sounds pretty good to me.
We'll take it, right?
Yeah.
So thankfully for him, he discovered this sense of umami because we have these taste receptors on our tongue for umami, which describes sort of a savory, like a pleasant savory, but also brothy mouth. So that's not easy it's complex, right? So it's not easy to describe. It's not sweet. It's not salty. It's not sour, bitter. You know what those are, but umami again is more of an experience than a distinct flavor. So there are foods rich in this umami, and we're going to show you some of them. I don't know if we want to show and tell or we'll wait. But umami.
Just pick a couple.
So what I see in front of me, classic umami, are these mushrooms. We're going to show them to you up close. So that is a great way, I would say. That's one of the first foods that come to my mind if we're going to describe umami. And there's a variety of different types of mushrooms in that container.
Yeah, and we saved this container of mushrooms to show you. It has this label on it. And boy, you know, it's so rare that we get to see these kind of mushrooms like this. This is the whole mushroom, and we're going to make mushroom soup out of it. And we're not even sure. We're not 100% sure.
I had to read the label. They look like oyster and trumpet, but I wasn't sure what else was in there. And it lists a few.
Yeah, so it doesn't tell us exactly what these are, but we're going to be making, look how beautiful it
How
is.
fun is that?
We're going to be
It's a
making
fun
a
thing.
mushroom soup from this today.
And that's a good example. You know, I saw them in the grocery store and I thought, well, this is new. Let's give this one a shot.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's a lot of different varieties of mushroom. If you're not interested in anything other than white button mushrooms, then that would work perfectly fine and give you umami. The other ingredient in our demo kitchen that comes to mind when I hear umami is our wonderful miso. So we have miso in a cup. We have miso in a couple different types of miso in our recipes today. And goodness gracious, does this impart umami? Definitely a pleasantly savory taste and flavor.
It's like a
Paste, I would say.
paste.
Kind of almost like peanut butter, but a little bit thinner. A little
And
spreadable.
that's a sweet one. Shiro miso is kind of sweet. And this hacho miso is like a dark, intense flavor.
Look how beautiful that is.
And we're going to use that in two recipes today.
And we'll talk a little bit more about what miso is. But so going back to umami, besides the mushrooms and the miso, also seaweed is a great way to describe umami. So you can see now how in Okinawa, now we're starting to really, much of their cooking involves seaweed, fish flakes, miso, mushrooms, much of what they're cooking with. So it is like this umami explosion. And there's some seaweed there, which you'll find seaweed almost anywhere. And so think about using like making a broth or a stock with seaweed. That's sort of what the Okinawans do when they make dashi, is they'll throw that seaweed into the stock and then they'll remove it. But it essentially has infused this umami flavor. Yeah. So this is how you make a dashi.
And dashi is one of their staples. It's a fish flavored, and they use dried fish flakes to flavor it with seaweed. We're not going to make it today, but we wanted you to see the ingredients that they use to flavor their foods from their environment. And they're not, having they're flavoring it with this. So they flavor the fish.
Yeah. So umami is important because what actually science is looking at umami, that because umami might be present in any foods, it might increase satisfaction, right? Because it's such a pleasant experience more than flavor. So they have found receptors for umami in our digestive tract. Get out of town, right? So as soon as your taste buds pick up on umami, the gut is reacting. And they have found that it stimulates digestion and that it helps improve salivary flow. So this is all super relevant, I think. It's sort of like the perfect combination. If there's umami that's hitting our tongue, it's starting the proper process.
Yeah, and I think it would be interesting because in that the cultures that we're studying, they do not experience high levels of obesity that we do.
No.
So there's something, right?
Yes.
And the only thing that's different is they're not really eating refined foods.
Yes.
And so what we have in the Japanese culture of umami, we have it in a lot of other cultures too. There may be some reasons why we experience such high levels of obesity in comparison.
Yeah. My partner, maybe I'm rubbing off on Because that
Yes.
is, the scientists are looking at that. If there's umami present in foods, so this is why we encourage you to think about using umami. Will you be more satisfied? Will you potentially eat less? They have looked at this in research and they don't have any conclusions, but the theory behind it is there. So that has probably imparted some benefit to the Okinawans in terms of their longevity. They have taken advantage of this umami, this flavor bomb with their foods. And as I mentioned earlier, they're sort of vegetarian by circumstance. So they ingest a lot of plant foods, primarily that purple sweet potato. So 60% of the calories that they eat come from that purple sweet potato. So I like to point that out because they're not an obese society and they're living a long life. So we can't blame the purple sweet potato or sweet potatoes or even potatoes for that matter.
Yeah.
They are healthy components, healthy choices to add to your healthy diet.
Yes.
Okay. Besides other root, they have some other fun root vegetables. I think if we went to a market, an Asian market, we probably would have used taro or some of their other interesting root vegetables that they have.
Mhm.
We have used bitter melon here in the past, and it is just what it sounds like. It's super bitter. But to the Okinawans, they appreciate that. That's what they're accustomed to in terms of, besides umami, their taste buds. So think about that. I think compared to the SAD diet, I think we are bombarding our taste buds. I think of it as like napalm with sugar, salt, fat. If we can minimize that by taking the processing out of our diet and trying to incorporate more whole foods with the inclusion of some umami, then we're going to probably eat better.
You know, I'm just looking at the
I
time.
know.
And I'm wondering, I'll get started with the mushroom soup if you want to continue talking.
Yeah. Okay.
So I'm going to get started with our mushroom soup so that Lori can continue to talk. And I did show you the mushrooms, so I'm just going to cut this out.
Yes, and I'm going to come around because I want to talk about another staple in the Japanese as well as the Okinawan diet. So they are big fans of legumes for their protein source. And they're going to use one of my favorite choices in the legume family. That is the good old tofu. So this is a wrapper of our high protein tofu that we're going to use today. And we're going to try to treat this tofu like it's a steak. But we took the tofu out of the wrapper and we've just cut it up. So you'll see in just a moment how we're going to prepare this. But this is a super high protein, super firm tofu. And tofu is a great option for those looking to eat enough protein in their diet, while also reaping the benefits of a plant-based protein. So this tofu has a good amount of protein, but also other components that have cancer protective qualities. So the first thing that comes to mind is a compound that we call genistein. And genistein is in all whole soy foods. So we have some soy milk here too. It's in soy foods, and it's this compound that literally talks to our genes. That's crazy talk, right? But we eat the soy foods, we break it down, and then chemically, it sort of communicates to our genes. You want to show something? Yeah.
I do. So we have decided to use leeks today because we wanted to introduce them to you. So these are the leeks that I've cut up, I've diced, and I'm just going to put them in the pot and let them kind of sweat out. And they do smell a little bit like onion. But this is what a leek looks like. It's really beautiful. And when you cut it, when you begin to use it, you are going to cut off the top portion of it. You're going to cut off the roots, and then you're going to slice it in half. You're going to slice it in half like I've done here and separate all the layers because it gets sandy and dirt gets inside. And then you can cut it up much like you would, dice it up much like you would an onion. But I did want you to see that because sometimes people don't use leeks and they're really a nice onion flavor.
This already smells amazing. And we're going to talk a little bit more about the onion family. But yeah, and I think of leeks as being a spring option. That's a really good choice right now for us locally. And easy enough. I think it looks intimidating, but as Debbie just described, easy enough to use. And gosh, you could start almost any recipe with something from the onion family and you're off and running in terms of flavor. So she just put a little bit of oil in there with the leeks and already. And I'm ready to go. Like, I'm sure whatever follows, it's going to taste amazing because of that start. Okay. But back to genistein, I didn't get to finish my point. So genistein talks to our genes, and it actually communicates with a gene called the FOX03 gene.
That's Lori being nerdy
And
showing off.
I got more to come, so don't worry. So this gene has responsibilities, multiple responsibilities that have to do with longevity. So we want that gene optimally turned on, and we can do that by eating foods rich in genistein. And that may be part of the explanation why the Okinawans live as long as they do, because they're consuming a good amount of soy and whole soy, more than we do. Definitely, that's another comparison. And they're getting this genistein. So don't fear soy, because sometimes I hear that from participants I work with.
I hear it all the time. Yeah, don't eat soy.
Don't eat soy. That's what I'm here for. I like to sort of dispel the myths and give you up-to-date, trustworthy information. Soy was something we were concerned about years ago, but the experts have definitively concluded that for any cancer survivor, it is a good choice. Okay, so don't be afraid to have soy. This smells amazing. I'll put that away.
Yeah, and the leeks, I hope you can see this. The leeks are so beautiful. They have bright green color. And we're just kind of sweating them down a little bit.
So back to the other choices in the Okinawan diet. I promised I would talk about the colors of vegetables. Do you want to take time to do that?
Yeah.
Okay. So we have another recipe coming up where we're going to use carrots. And in these carrots, I don't know, probably you could choose orange, but we decided to go with a variety of rainbow carrots. So sometimes you'll find purple or sort of like a magenta carrot, but here we have some yellow and white, as well as orange carrots. So they all taste like carrots, but because of their different colors, they have different properties. And the properties have to do with benefiting our health, primarily as antioxidants. So antioxidants are things that can fix our damaged cells. So when we're out in the world and being bombarded by toxins or other things in our environment, antioxidants in our food choices can help come in and minimize the damage that those environmental toxins inflict on the body. And so we want that. We want to protect our healthy cells. We want to fix our damaged cells. And that's what brightly colored fruits and vegetables give to our diet.
Yeah, so we are going to add, now it says to use ginger. That doesn't look like ginger to me, Lori.
No, what kind of ginger did you get?
Wow. I don't
We're talking
like,
about ginger. That's not ginger.
I don't like to cut garlic or ginger, so I always use this product, and it's really great. This
She
is a
loves it.
teaspoon of ginger. That's it.
So easy. So that's kept in the freezer, and it's a time saver. It's super convenient. The Okinawans probably don't use that,
Probably not.
but this is our version of it, and that's what's so nice about trying some of these recipes, are that they're so doable. So doable.
Well, and I think one of the things, yeah, you smell the ginger now. I think one of the things we have to remember also is that we do live in this country,
Right.
right? And we do have a lot of convenience products that we can take advantage of.
Yes.
So we're not running, we don't have to like,
We're more likely to make it happen because if we use these convenient products that we're going to show you a ton of that throughout this whole series, they are a time saver. They're an energy saver. And if our life gets in the way, we still can make it happen. That's the bottom line, making it happen.
so we use a lot of, in other cultures, they don't necessarily use cow milk in the same way that we do. And in Okinawa, they use soy milk a lot, right? So this is soy milk. It has a really creamy texture, but you could use oat milk or almond milk.
Sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Or even real milk, cow's milk.
You absolutely could use cow's milk. Yeah. I think that what we appreciate about soy milk is that it does have a little bit more of a creamy mouthfeel, but use whatever alternative or regular cow's milk if you'd like to try this recipe. There goes the bay leaf.
Bay leaf.
Another one of Debbie's favorites. So I just wanted to show the carton of soy milk that we happen to choose today. There's a couple words you want to look for with any dairy alternative are unsweetened and original. I think sometimes those two words matter because what that means if the product is unsweetened and original, it does not have added sugar. So the other way to determine that, really the best way, is to now look at the nutrition facts panel and hopefully I can minimize that glare. If you look under total carbohydrate, you will see this new line for added sugars. Okay, so this product has 0 grams of added sugar. That's what we're looking for, okay, with any dairy alternative. You'd be surprised. They can sometimes sneak like 2 or 3 teaspoons of added sugar into it. So we would much prefer you add your own because chances are you'll add less. Okay. Soy milk is also pretty high in protein. That's why we like it as an option.
So, did we get through
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So, we, and also in Okinawa, they have a custom, right? About eating, right? Directly about eating, because they have a consciousness regarding overeating.
Yes.
Right? And that is called Hari Hachibu.
Okay.
Hari Hachibu.
I'll take it.
Is that,
I have no idea.
yeah, we have no idea. And maybe if we have somebody who's Japanese in the audience, they could let us know.
Educate us. Yeah.
And that is a custom that they grow up with, which says we're going to eat until we're about 8 out of 10 full. Right? Lori and I talk a lot about this when we refer to the hunger scale.
Yes.
Right? And if you're interested in that, just Google hunger scale. But what the hunger scale recommends is that we eat when we're a little bit hungry.
Yes.
And we stop before we're totally stuffed, which isn't exactly how we've been taught to eat, although now we're becoming more conscious of the health benefits of moderation. So, that means that they experience way less instances of obesity, and that contributes to their health. And I think we
and they're still satisfied. You know, like I want to imagine, I believe that, that 80% is enough. And I just think there's a greater appreciation and respect then for the food and the purpose it serves in their lives because of that. I think sometimes we take it for granted here, and we're so privileged. We have so much anytime that we want that potentially can lead to excess. So just think about that as another comparison. Not only the food choices, but also the eating behaviors between the SAD and the Okinawan diet.
yes.
Yeah.
And so we're going to move forward with the tofu steak with miso mushrooms.
Okay. We're cooking up our tofu.
We are.
Yeah.
And
Yeah, I love this. If you want to just start prepping and working, and I'll talk through it.
Okay.
I love this as an option for anyone who is a little fearful of tofu. Because first of all, we're taking advantage of that super firm, high protein tofu. So it's not mushy. It's not. It's got all that. Usually you'll find tofu that's sitting in a bath, essentially. And this isn't. They squeeze out all of that water, and it actually ends up concentrating, the protein in this. That's why it's a high protein tofu. And we're just sort of dredging it in some flour, and you could use whatever flour.
I used whole wheat flour that we had in our cabinet.
I'm rubbing off on her.
Yes.
So you could use whole wheat flour. If you're looking to, if for some reason you're avoiding gluten, any gluten alternative would be fine. Of course, like arrowroot, or even like, you could probably grind up some oats and
Yes.
put that on here.
Yes. And I was going to use an alternative flour till I found our flour. And cooking in this kitchen is always an adventure.
Yes.
You never know what you're not going to find. You never know what you're going to find.
So we improvise very often.
Yes, we do.
We do a good job of it.
And you know what? I think that's an important point for everybody, right?
Yes.
Improvise.
Yeah.
Try new things.
Yes. And so don't let, the lack of perfection or the expectations that are too high, don't let that deter you. Just get your hands dirty, use your instincts. Probably you all have been cooking for a long time now, so you know what to do. Just get in there and experiment in a way. But what we're going to do is we're just kind of like sauteing this because we're going to kind of treat it that way, like it's almost like a piece of meat. Because it is their meat source in the Okinawan diet. So high in protein. It's got that genistein. Remember that. So it's talking to the genes that regulate longevity. And it's kind of plain, right? Tofu, if you've ever had it, there's not much to it.
Not much to it.
Flavor-wise. So we are going to take advantage of the Okinawan way, and we're going to add some umami to this. All right.
Yeah, and if you notice today, we are using some vegetables and flavorings that are common to all of our recipes, right? So we have tofu here, we have soy milk here. We're going to be using mushrooms and leeks and ginger here. We're also going to be using miso here and pepper flakes to maybe add a little spice to things a little bit.
I would say that's another characteristic of the Okinawan diet, separate from the Japanese diet. So just like Debbie was describing earlier, different regions of our country have different flavors. The Okinawan, I would say, is sort of like Japanese with spice. It's spicy. So it's a lot of great flavors, from the ginger to the chili paste or red pepper flakes, and then of course our friend umami. So it's, I think it's a fun way to look at Japanese cooking too.
Yeah. So what I'm doing here is trying to find my recipe, but
we're going to saute in here everything cut all our.
And we're also using sesame oil here, which is a really nice oil, has a lot of flavor. You don't want to use too much of it, but it's really good to flavor things. So we have our sesame oil here, and that comes in this little jar bottle. And it really does flavor things so nicely.
Such great flavor if you're not familiar with it, and good to hold up to high heat. So great in each of these recipes. And tremendous flavor.
And also part of using healthy oils, right? And fats, right?
Yeah.
It is a healthy fat.
It's a healthy fat, very high in vitamin E, which is an important antioxidant. So antioxidants, remember, they are the good guys that help kind of fix our damaged cells. So when cells get damaged over a long period of time, that's what leads to chronic disease as well as aging. So if we can fix our cells and also keep our healthy cells healthy, then we're gonna help ourselves live longer.
So you can see I took the tough parts of the leek out. I did get a few in there. And now I'm going to just throw it in the pan.
Can't wait. Yeah. So leeks are in the onion family. And I always brag about another family of vegetables, the cruciferous family.
Oh, yeah.
And we'll get to that in other classes. We don't have cruciferous today, but that's okay because we have the Allium family.
Ooh,
Fancy, I know.
you are fancy.
So the Allium family is all of your onions and garlic. So think about all the different varieties. Leeks are in that family, but onions, all the different colored onions and varieties of onion, chives, shallot. What am I missing? There's a ton. Scallions, you name it. I mean, there's a host of options, and they have an antioxidant in them called camphorol. I know I said another fancy word, camphorol. There's not gonna be a quiz on this, don't worry. But yeah, we love camphorol because again, it is an antioxidant. So it's helping keep our healthy cells healthy, fixing those damaged cells.
These are our mushrooms. And this is we're using Mirin. Mirin, do you want to?
Let me hold up Mirin, is there? So Mirin is basically a sweet Japanese rice wine. And I don't see it here, but we'll show it to you. But it's in most grocery stores. And it has a little bit of a sweetness to it. Yes, it has alcohol in it too. It's a rice wine, but it will cook off in this recipe. And again, it has a subtle sweetness.
And we put yes, this is the Mirin.
Show it.
And we used red pepper flakes, and we used our miso, we used ginger, and of course this wonderful, wonderful leek, which I think is so fantastic looking.
Yeah. So here's the Mirin that we just happened to buy. There's actually a ton of different options on the market. You could make Mirin, but it's Japanese rice wine. Okay. And it's going to add an interesting flavor to this. I think again, this saute of mushrooms with the leeks, the miso, it's like umami, right? That's going to really dress up that otherwise kind of bland tofu.
So this smells delicious. The miso is kind of disintegrating and giving it a nice brown color.
Yeah. And miso is fermented soybean paste. So essentially what they do is this is going to sound real appetizing. They take a mold and they inoculate soybeans with this mold and they'll let it ferment for weeks, sometimes years. So you can see how from that fermentation process, whenever they decide to stop it and make the miso, you're going to get a great variety of options. So the shorter the fermentation time, generally the more mild the flavor. So our white miso that we have here, shiro miso, which Debbie held up before, that has a more subtle, tiny bit sweet flavor. Whereas this rich red miso over here is like bold, I would say, really robust flavor. If you've not ever had miso before, I would suggest you go with the white miso. I think that this is a transition miso. So you probably want to work towards that robust flavor. When you get miso soup, they use white miso. So if you like miso soup, now you have an idea.
So I'm just toasting all the sides of the tofu. We're going to get ready to plate. If you, Lori, want to make the carrots.
Let's start. Get going on the carrots. Yep. I got a good pan there. Can I take advantage of your middle burner? Awesome. Okay. So I'm going to be making a sauteed carrot. They're not just any carrots. They're sweet and spicy, just the way I like them. So in this recipe, which I'm going to find, myself. We are just gonna saute, very simply, some carrot ribbons. We're gonna start our pan again with our sesame oil.
So you can see that the tofu is really nice and browned. And then we're just gonna take our mushrooms and we're gonna put them on top.
I think that's fancy.
It is fancy.
So let my oil heat up, and then Debbie prepped me. So I have some carrots that are both orange and white and yellow, and then some sliced onion. And we went with the sweet onion. We went with Vidalia.
Yes.
And we're gonna toss this into saute for just a few minutes.
And if I were gonna make this at home, I would just toss the tofu in with the veggies.
Yeah.
And you can also serve it with some tomatoes and other things on top. And then we would just serve it right onto the plate from here, kind of mixing all the flavors. A really nice, that's
So
a
pretty.
really nice dish.
It's a nice presentation.
Yeah.
Yeah, I would say like that to me looks delicious, but if you're someone who appreciates some color or eats with your eyes, or serving to those who eat with their eyes, you might want to add another color to this mix. So things like sliced tomatoes, even more fresh green on top, like baby spinach, or parsley always finishes and garnishes nicely. But I think that looks beautiful as is. So we're just gonna let these saute through a couple minutes.
And in the meantime, we're gonna start making our golden milk. And we're gonna use our soy milk. We're gonna add some turmeric and cinnamon. Some black pepper. Lori, you want to talk about these ingredients a little
Yeah,
bit?
yeah.
Because this is like
Special.
a bomb, right?
It's so special. Yeah, I mean, we're talking
A little bit of vanilla, which I can't open.
Yeah, we're gonna take a moment to talk about turmeric. I look forward to it. All right, I can do it now. So turmeric, a lot of people ask about. They want to take it, they want to eat it, they're not sure how or where to start, and they're not even sure why. So I'd like to help you. I'd like to answer those questions. All right, so the turmeric, it is a spice, certainly found in the Okinawan diet, and it's gorgeous in color. It's got this deep orange, kind of rusty, I would say rusty orange color. And that is the phytochemical curcumin. And curcumin, remember, these colors matter. Curcumin acts, again, like a communicator to our genes. And it actually, I think the best way to describe it is that it talks to the genes that act like a light switch. So, and that light switch controls inflammation. So normally we want that light switch turned on and off. Maybe we enter the room, leave the room. That's how inflammation should work. It should turn on and off, on and off. And that's what curcumin has a responsibility to do, to turn it on and off. But sometimes that light switch isn't working properly. And we turn it on and it stays on. And so over many years of that light switch being turned on, that promotes inflammation. And inflammation long-term is not good for us in terms of aging as well as chronic disease. So the curcumin, that beautiful color, comes in, talks to the genes in our body. It's actually a group of genes called nuclear factor kappa beta. That's the name of the pathway. And it turns that switch off. So now it helps to stop that chronic inflammation. Now that's very powerful stuff, okay? As it turns out, when we eat turmeric, we
I'm
don't
just adding the miso.
when we eat turmeric, we don't get a lot of the curcumin from it. So we want to facilitate the absorption of that by adding the black pepper that Debbie added. Now, this is gonna, I think, gonna be an interesting recipe because turmeric doesn't have the best of flavor. I think for most people I work with, they just don't necessarily care for it. So we're gonna try it. We're gonna take advantage of spices in here, like cinnamon and the vanilla extract we use, and we use real vanilla. And that may be just enough to kind of enhance this turmeric beverage, which is now whipping up.
I'm whisking it because the cinnamon is hard to make something lump. And you can sweeten this. I put some honey out. You can use some maple syrup. Yeah, that's
Yeah,
the miso.
sweeten it.
That's the miso.
Making sure. All right, so I'm adding a miso broth to this. There's our umami, right? And we bought this product at another grocery store. And essentially, what it is white miso with some rice and some kombu, so some kelp. So think of it like seaweed broth with miso together. Super umami. Okay, so we're gonna saute the carrots in that for just a moment. You could add even just vegetable broth if you wanted to do this. That's what's kind of nice about this recipe. It's versatile.
All the smells in here are just delicious.
Yeah.
So now we have our cream of mushroom soup, which is really finished. I mean, we cooked it in like 15 minutes.
Yeah.
And I'm gonna put it in a bowl so that you can see it. And boy, I can't wait. We're gonna take out the bay leaf. And boy, if you were all here, we would have made a double batch of it so that we could share.
It smells
together.
amazing. Yeah, I'm so ready. I'm adding to my saute, so the miso broth with carrots and the onions, and now some mirin.
The cream of mushroom soup. Really, what a lovely meal that would make. The tofu, the cream of mushroom soup,
Yeah.
maybe some of the spicy carrots. And then for dessert, what do we have for dessert?
It's whipping up right now. I'm gonna add some chili paste. Also, that finishes this, okay? So we're just gonna combine the two and just let it cook for about another minute. So that chili paste is gonna add some real spice. Use whatever you prefer, okay? So if you're not one that's a fan for that, you can omit that in here. Maybe just use paprika instead, or just a little punch. But those are nice and softened together. Smells delish. I'm gonna turn that off and I'll plate it in just a moment.
So you can see this is warm. It has this lovely yellow color from the turmeric and the cinnamon.
I'd like to see it like in, I know it's not the right couple, we don't have much back here.
I'm a little afraid to put it in there.
I know.
So you don't crack it.
Oh, the glass.
Sometimes we're challenged in the kitchen because we
Oh,
think
my.
we have stuff in here and we don't. So I'm just gonna put it in here so that you guys can see it. I'm afraid this is gonna break in this mode. We think we have mugs in here. We assume we have mugs in here. And then we come and we don't have them anymore. So this is the, it smells so delicious. Yeah, and I'm gonna taste it.
I smell the vanilla and the cinnamon, which is interesting. I think like that's taking advantage of our senses, right?
And you know, cinnamon is such a sweet spice
Yes.
that tastes sweet, even though we have not put anything in it to make it sweet. Although you could add some, I think maple syrup would be delicious in
Yeah.
there, a little maple syrup.
Yeah.
What a lovely coupled something to have in the evening.
yeah.
We know that milk is often, hot beverages, or except for coffee, are often really great to help us relax at night. So think about that maybe as a healthy choice instead of something that's like super sweetened.
Yeah, I feel like it's like a ritual that you could have. All right, so here's our carrots and onion, and you see how simple that recipe was, I think. Just combining a few ingredients and really something super flavorful. And carrots, like I think if you have a refined palate, you can appreciate how sweet carrots are. So that's the sweetness, along with a little bit of the mirin, and then the chili paste is giving it the spice. Hi, I know her.
So thank you for coming to our program today. We'll just review very quickly what we would like for you to learn, and that's the flavor profile of Okinawa, Japan, how beautiful some of the foods are, and kind of learning how to branch out to perhaps enjoy things that are a little bit out of your comfort zone. I mean, the tofu looks so good. I'm going to have a piece of that.
I can't wait.
Yeah. And also think about how you can connect with others a little bit more, right? Really, especially as we come out of this pandemic, right?
Especially.
Connect with others a little bit more, maybe share a meal, even if it's just a little almond
Cup of
butter
soup.
sandwich or a cup of soup, right? And also think about moving, getting out. The spring is so conducive to that. Just getting out a little bit and maybe branching out and sampling some healthier foods that maybe aren't on your list of go-tos right now.
Yeah, and think about that SAD diet and the behaviors, not even just around the foods, but the behaviors around eating. And if you took anything away from today, and how to make some changes.
Yeah, so we've enjoyed having you here. We hope you'll come back for sessions 2, 3, 4, and 5.
Yes.
Yeah, and you can check the website for registrations on that. And read, we sent you all a handout that probably has a lot more information than we could cover today, and I hope you'll read that and maybe try some of these recipes. If you do, let us know.
Yeah.
We'd like
Can
to
I
know
can I
how
ask a
you like them.
question? Can I ask a question?
Sure.
A lot of the things that you use, a lot of the practical umami seem to have a lot of sodium in it. So how does their lifestyle offset this sodium?
Excellent question. I failed to bring that up during our time today. So thank you, Marilyn. So yes, there's a lot of salt. Relative to the standard diet, I don't know. I think we might rival, I would say even exceed the amount of salt that they have. So if you were to do like a side-by-side comparison of like what's in soy sauce or even miso, the amount of sodium might surprise you. It might be less than what you might get from like a takeout dish that's not using miso or not using soy. So think about using these ingredients and how much bang for buck we get in terms of flavor, that you use less of it. Now, in the Okinawan lifestyle, they are living in a climate where they are perspiring quite often. So they have loss of fluids and sodium. So from the salt in their diet, they're probably losing it. But at the same time, they're also basically vegetarian. So they're having a lot of other important minerals that offset any negative effects that sodium might have. And that's sort of part of the issue in the SAD diet, is that we have a lot of sodium, but we also lack other important minerals like potassium, magnesium, and calcium. So plant foods especially give those minerals to our body and offset that sodium. Great question.
So thanks everybody for coming. We have enjoyed having you today. We're running out of time, so if you have any further questions, we'd really like to answer them. Please email them to either Lori or myself, or you can give them to our program facilitator today, and they can forward them to us. We'd be happy to answer more questions via email. So good to see you all. Hope to see you in a